you, Emmanuel Commodore, for that introduction. Can I acknowledge the Ambassador and the Consul General? Can I acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues, newly anointed Federal Minister Arthur Sinodinos, my friend and my colleague who I'm responsible for appointing to the best portfolio in state government, George Soros. Can I acknowledge the members of the upper house who are here, including David Clark. Ladies and gentlemen, in particular, our visitors from overseas. And can I just encourage you to have a terrific time during your stay in Sydney, but can I particularly commend to you shopping?
Yes.
Because it's not just the Greek economy that could do with some confidence. You may be wondering why an Australian born here, of Irish heritage, would be here at this colloquy. Well, firstly, because I've never been to a colloquy before. Certainly as a Member of Parliament, George and Arthur and I have been involved with many soliloquies where we talk to ourselves. But I wish you well over the next 2 days talking to each other about an important issue at this colloquy. Secondly, though, as has been touched on already, there is much that the Western world owes to Greek civilization. In the 5th and the 6th centuries, Greece and Athens at its heart, but I know Vassouris is here, so we can't forget Corinth, and I have constituents who come from Sparta, so we can't forget the other parts of Greece. But Greece with Athens at its heart was a cauldron of new and at times radical ideas. And there's no doubt that classical Greek culture has come down through the centuries and shaped all of our civilisations, including here in Australia. More than 2,500 years ago, Greek philosophers laid the foundation for modern thought and discourse on issues as diverse as ethics, aesthetics, logistics, logic and metaphysics. I'm sure they did some good logistics too, having seen in person the Acropolis. Perhaps the greatest of the Greek thinkers, Socrates and his friend Plato, are credited with planting those earliest seeds of democracy. And of course, you know better than I do that Socrates paid the ultimate price for questioning the status quo. Sentenced to death by a jury, and you just need to listen to this, for being an evildoer and a curious person. But like so many people who have been responsible for changing the course of history, the true value of his contribution wasn't seen perhaps for tens of years, if not centuries. Socrates challenged his acolytes to think for themselves. He asked questions instead of giving answers. And that, of course, is the very basis of the modern approach to education. An educational approach that we embrace very strongly here in New South Wales, and one that is happily embraced around the world. For many people around the world, the Parthenon and the entire Acropolis are the physical embodiment of what we see as ideal citizenship. So for that reason alone, I'm here. But secondly, I'm here because I'm Premier of the largest state in Australia. I'm here as Premier of a government that has the good fortune to represent the single biggest number of Australians of Greek heritage, whether born there or parents and grandparents, great-grandparents and great-great-parents, and anywhere else in the country. And we understand that this is important to your identity. It's important to everything that Greece has left its stamp on you. And so there's a good reason why, for that reason, George and Arthur and I, as members of Parliament, should be here supporting this cause. But there is another reason, and that is that as someone who grew up in Darwin, and it's great to see the Orthodox community of Darwin being a keen sponsor of this organisation, this colloquy. As someone who had the joy of going to school with people of Greek heritage, usually firstborn generation, who worked in a corner store owned by Chinese and at the age of 14 could quote the prices and count out the change in Greek. I can't say a word in Greek today, but I could do it when I was 14. As someone who, at school and at university, was deeply interested in ancient history, I can still remember as if it was yesterday my visit to Greece in 1982 as a much younger person, climbing up to the Acropolis at a time when, as I was checking tonight, the controls about where you could go and what you could do and where you could sit were much less. And sitting on the wall, looking down across Athens, then looking back into the midst of the Acropolis, and just marvelling as a citizen of a country which in those days was yet to reach its bicentenary of European civilisation. Just the difference between Australia and Greece. The difference between European civilisation and Australia, taking nothing away from indigenous civilisation, but the sophistication of Greek civilisation and the touch that it had around the world. And then looking at those remnant buildings, still magnificent, but nevertheless still remnants. And considering, initially because of the guidebook, but importantly because of later studies, understanding about the activities of Lord Elgin, the loss of what to me at times were hard to understand, because as an Australian growing up in this country, marbles meant something completely different. So I got through that. But understanding too just how central that must be to everything that the Acropolis and the Parthenon represents. So what I wanted to say was that as a country that has benefited from repatriation from British museums of indigenous cultural items, including indigenous burial packages. The British government to me has already breached the wall. The British government has established that when pressure is exerted, it can do the right thing. And whilst I'm sure it would argue that Lord Elgin was motivated by good principles of scientific exploration, principles of art, principles of collection, which of course is not just common to what went on in Greece, but has happened around the world for centuries. There comes a time to recognise the centrality of those pieces to a country, to a civilisation, and to the philosophy that they sent across the world. So for that reason, I'm delighted to be here tonight with so many of you, but delighted to be here with so many members of the New South Wales and Federal Parliament to officially launch this 2-day colloquy. I wish you well, not just over the next 2 days, but in the cause that you have, because it is the cause of right. It is the cause of ensuring that Greece has restored to it a critical part of its heritage, and we're all in favour of that.